For every shot you hit, there's going to be an ideal contact point, and that's going to be where you make contact with the ball relative to your body based on the ball that you're dealing with and the shot that you're trying to hit. And the idea is that we're trying to be as efficient as possible, and we're trying to use our kinetic chain to create the racket head speed by the time we make contact with the ball in the ideal position. So we've got two variables. Because the ball is hit however your opponent hits it, you can't control that. We've then got two variables left. The first one is when you start your swing relative to the flight of the ball, and the second one is how quickly you swing and the swing path that you use. So it's starting your swing and the swing path and swing speed. Most of the time, for most players, the issue is that players start their swing too late relative to the flight of the ball. One major reason that this can happen is that players don't prepare quickly enough and they don't get set up in time quickly enough, which then causes them to start their swing late. But there's also a large percentage of players that do prepare and set up in position in time. The issue isn't to do with their preparation. The issue is just flat out that they start their swing too late. And the main reason that this happens is because players simply can't judge the speed and the flight of the ball and how far it is away accurately enough in order to start the swing at the right time. Because every single shot that you deal with is different, and unless your visual system functions at a sufficiently high level and judges speed and judges distance really, really accurately, you're not going to know how far the ball is away, and you're not going to be able to start your swing at the right time. And because of that, you then won't be able to adjust the speed of your swing and the swing path appropriately. And this is the problem that I dealt with when I was younger. I had very specific visual issues that I had absolutely no clue were going on until I started to assess them and find out. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you a couple of simple visual assessments for skills that are really important for your ability to read the speed of the ball and to read how far the ball is away so that you can start your swing at the right time. So I'm going to show you two simple assessments, but before I do, I want to let you know about a brain-based training masterclass that I've got. So if you're interested in learning more about using brain-based training to address underlying problems like this and improve your performance, the link to that masterclass is going to be down in the description. Now, with that said, the first exercise we're going to do is called a pencil push-up. You can use a pen or a pencil, and it's assessing for the visual skill of convergence. So whether your eyes can move inwards in coordination together. So your eyes moving inwards and just generally working in coordination is going to be really important for your ball tracking and every other visual skill that you need on court. But when it comes to judging distance and depth and speed, one of the big things is going to be that your brain uses the image from both eyes together, because each eye is like a camera lens, and your brain's job is to point them both at the target, so the ball, and then your brain blends those images together, and that's how you get 3D vision and you can judge distance and depth. Well, if your eyes don't track well together and in coordination, it makes it really hard for your brain to use the images well, and it can be a big reason that players can't judge distance and depth and the speed of the ball. And this was something that I struggled with when I was younger, and I find a lot of other players do as well. So we're going to be holding the tip of the pen or the pencil. So this is my target, the actual tip, and I'm going to be slowly bringing it in to the bridge of my nose. So notice that I'm going into the bridge of my nose. I'm not going to there. I'm not going up there. I'm trying to go right in between my eyes. And I also started with it at arm's length, and I brought it in nice and slowly, trying to keep my head still. Now, although this looks really simple, it is very highly advisable for you to record yourself like I'm doing it here, because although it looks kind of simple, what I find is the vast majority of people still don't do it correctly because their brains compensate, because they're not very good at doing this particular visual skill. So you want to record yourself, and it's very easy to see some of the compensations that I'm talking about. But the actual assessment, what we're looking for is, can we still maintain one single image as we bring the pen tip in. Because each eye is like a camera lens that's looking at the target. If one of the eyes doesn't come inwards, and for me it was my left eye when I was younger, the tip of the pen is going to start to split in two. My left eye is pulling away. So you have to go nice and slowly and try and identify if it starts to split in two. A big mistake that a lot of people make is they go too quickly. One eye is looking at the target, the other eye is looking somewhere completely different, and they don't realize that they're doing that because they've just gone too quickly. So go nice and slowly when you do it and see if you can identify the point at which it splits in two. Now, you know, if we can get it into there, that's a small deficit before it splits in two. If it splits in two out here somewhere, that's going to indicate a much bigger deficit. But anything other than all the way in is going to indicate an issue with this area and this part of the brain that we know is going to be negatively affecting your ability to judge distance and depth and speed of the ball. Now, a couple of things to note. The first one is that it'll probably go blurry as you bring it in close. That's okay. What we're looking for is whether it splits in two or not. The other thing is that as you bring it into, everything else behind it is going to be double. So I've got 2 tripods and 2 cameras behind, and that's perfectly normal because this is what I'm looking at. Behind that, the images are going to appear double. Now, there's a few compensations to look out for, and this is why you want to record yourself. The first one is that you take the tip of the pen down too low. We're trying to go right in between the eyes because we're assessing a very specific muscle, a specific nerve, and a specific part of the brain. If you unintentionally pull it down there, that indicates an issue. If you unintentionally pull it above the eye line, that indicates an issue. And something else that people tend to do is they tend to move it in front of one of the eyes, and that is again a compensation because the brain can't quite do it. Some players also start with it just in front of one of the eyes and pull it directly in. So there's lots of different compensations that can happen in terms of where you bring the target. And then the other compensation that often happens is people move their head. So instead of the eyes tracking inwards, they try and get an assist, and they're trying to activate different neck muscles, and those movements also activate certain parts of the brain. So your brain is using it as a compensation strategy. But that's the assessment. Can you get it all the way in, single tip, right in between your eyes and all the way out? If you can't, I use this as a very strong indication that the underlying brain areas that control this aren't working quite in the way that we need them to, and it is definitely going to be causing you issues in terms of timing and judging distance and depth and speed of the ball. For the second assessment, you're going to need a little bit of kit. So I'm using something called a Brock string, which is just a string with beads on it. So it's BROCK string. You can order them on Amazon for really cheaply, or you can just get a bit of string and tie knots in it, and you can kind of do the assessment that way as well. But this is a bit of kit that we can use to test a couple of things. Firstly, we can directly test whether your brain is using the images from both eyes together, but then it also tests or assesses eye alignment. And as I explained with the previous assessment, for us to judge distance and depth optimally, we need good 3D vision, and to have good 3D vision, we need our eyes to be pointing at the target properly, and we need our brain to be processing the image from both eyes. So this is how we can assess it. And you might have seen a video of Sabalenka doing this. I think it was before the US Open. So it's an exercise that a lot of top pros do as well. But generally the setup for this, I like to use 3 beads. I have one at around 6 inches away. So I'm just kind of hooking it over my finger like so it's out the way. I've just got it attached to the tripod. You could use a door frame and anything else that you've got at home, but this one's about 6 inches. I've got a yellow bead that's around contact point distance, something like that. And then I have the third bead. It's off camera, you can't see it, but as far away as possible. And then we're going to do the same assessment at all 3 distances. So I'm going to start by looking at the red bead, and what I should see is 2 strings going directly into the center of the red bead and 2 strings coming out of the back of the red bead. And both strings should be an even level of brightness, and that's what I see. I'm then going to look at the yellow bead, and again I should see 2 strings going in directly into the center of the bead and 2 strings coming out, and they should be an equal level of brightness, and that's what I see. And then I see the same thing at the third bead, because I don't have issues with this particular skill anymore. So what we're assessing here is visual suppression. Can your brain process the image from both eyes together? If your brain isn't processing an image from one of the eyes, there's only going to be 1 string, and this is what used to happen to me. My right eye was being processed, my brain wasn't paying attention to my left eye, so when I looked at the bead, I only saw 1 string. The string that comes from the left is from the right eye, just because of the way the brain processes information and because of the wiring. So for me, when I looked at it, I used to see a string going from the left because that's my right eye, and no string from the right because my left eye wasn't being processed. So you might have a situation like that where you can only see one string, but what I find for most people is they have a partial suppression. So the brain is able to see two strings, but one of them is more clear and the other one is less clear. So maybe it looks grey or it looks faded, or sometimes it can appear and can disappear. Another thing that can happen is it alternates. So the brain sees one string and then the other, and it kind of flicks back and forth with things fading in and out, and things turning grey and strange things going on. But anything other than two strings of an even level of brightness going directly into the center of the bead is an indication of some element of visual suppression, and it's going to be creating problems for you. The second part of the assessment is going to be about the eye alignment. So for me, the strings go directly into the center, but some people have a situation where the strings cross just before the center of the bead or just after the center of the bead. So what this means is their brain isn't quite pointing the eyes up in the way that it thinks. It's kind of thinking things are either closer or further away than they actually are. So obviously, errors in either place, either if your brain isn't using one of the images or if your brain isn't lining your eyes up, both of those are going to create huge problems for judging distance and depth. And because of that, they're going to affect your ability to read the speed and the flight of the ball and to start your swing at the right time. Okay, so go through those assessments and see how you get on. I find that the vast majority of players have issues with both assessments, and I've assessed hundreds of adult players. Some players only have issues with one, but normally it's both assessments that people struggle with. But the interesting thing is, most people don't think they have a problem with either assessment because often people don't follow the initial instructions and they don't realize that they have the issue because they're not following the instructions. So you might want to watch the video a couple of times and make sure that you're doing things properly, and try recording yourself, especially on the pencil push-up. But the good news is, if you do find an issue, you can start to try and correct them by doing the assessment over and over again. So that's the cool thing about neurology and brain-based training, is when you assess something, you're activating that part of the brain. So just doing the assessment again is a form of training exercise. And often that can correct the problem in some people. For other people, you might need to dig deeper and find other ways to activate things. Now, even if you did manage to pass the assessment, if you're in the small percentage that passed, it doesn't mean that doing these exercises isn't useful. You can still use them as training tools to improve the function in these parts of the brain. And that's why you see a player like Sablenka, who presumably doesn't have any kind of visual suppression because she's such an amazing player with amazing timing, but she does it before big matches because it's a great training tool for switching brain areas on. But if you found this interesting and you'd like to learn more, like I mentioned earlier, there is a masterclass. The link is down below in the description. If you did enjoy the video, if you give me a thumbs up, that would be fantastic. If you haven't subscribed to my channel before, that always really helps me out. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I try and respond as quickly as I can. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Do the assessments, see how you get on, and I'll catch you next time.